Some souls are chosen long before kings ever learn their names. The rain had not stopped for 3 days, turning the royal stables of Blackthorn Keep into a place of dripping beams, muddy footprints, and restless horses that stamped against the cold. Stable hands whispered that the oldest stall at the far end should never be opened after sunset. They said a great silver she-wolf had claimed it months ago, a fierce creature carrying unborn pups beneath her thick winter coat. No hunter could drive her away. No trainer could earn her trust. Even the bravest guards kept their distance whenever her pale golden eyes flashed through the darkness. Yet on this storm-filled night, Alpha King Adrian Blackthorn walked toward that forgotten corner alone. His heavy boots echoed across the weathered wooden floor while a lantern cast warm circles through the shadows. The scent of fresh hay mixed with rainwater and cedar drifted through the stable, but another scent lingered beneath it, something softer, almost impossible to describe. It reminded him of spring wildflowers after the last snow had melted. He frowned. That scent did not belong inside a royal stable. Thunder rolled overhead as one of the horses nervously snorted. Adrian stopped outside the old stall. The massive silver wolf was there exactly as the guards had reported, curled protectively against the back wall. She did not growl. She did not bare her teeth. Instead, she simply lifted her head and watched him with calm, intelligent eyes. That alone was enough to unsettle him. This wolf feared no alpha, yet tonight she showed neither challenge nor warning. Slowly, Adrian raised the lantern higher, allowing the golden light to spill across the straw-covered floor. His breath caught. Curled beside the wolf, wrapped in nothing more than a faded gray blanket, lay a young woman asleep. She looked no older than 22. Strands of chestnut hair rested across her pale face, while one hand remained stretched toward the wolf as though she had fallen asleep, comforting her. Her clothes were simple, patched too many times to count, and exhaustion had softened every line of her face until she appeared almost childlike in peaceful sleep. The wolf rested her enormous head inches from the young woman's shoulder, breathing slowly, protectively, as if guarding something far more precious than herself. Adrian had seen battlefields, royal ceremonies, and countless impossible things since becoming king, but nothing prepared him for the quiet certainty filling that tiny stall. One of the guards hurried toward him before stopping several feet away. "Your Majesty," the man whispered urgently, "please step back. She becomes aggressive if anyone gets close." Adrian never looked away from the sleeping stranger. "The wolf?" he asked quietly. The guard swallowed hard. "No, sir." Adrian finally turned. "The girl? No one knows who she is. She works with the stable crew sometimes. She disappears before sunrise and returns after dark. We've tried waking her before. The wolf always moves between her and everyone else." Adrian studied the sleeping woman again. There were faint traces of straw woven into her hair and tiny scratches across her weathered hands, the kind earned from honest work instead of privilege. She looked nothing like someone chosen by fate. She looked forgotten. Another rumble of thunder shook the stable. The young woman stirred slightly, pulling the blanket closer without opening her eyes. At the same moment, the pregnant wolf carefully shifted her own massive body, shielding the girl from the draft slipping beneath the old wooden door. Adrian watched the movement in complete silence. It was not instinct alone. It was devotion. Something ancient stirred deep inside him, a feeling older than memory itself, whispering that he was witnessing the beginning of a story the moon had been writing long before either of them had taken their first breath. Morning arrived beneath a sky washed clean by the passing storm, but Blackthorn Keep awakened to the same rhythms it had followed for generations. Servants hurried through stone corridors balancing baskets of bread, stable hands carried fresh hay across muddy paths, and noble families prepared for another day filled with privilege they rarely questioned. Emily Carter moved through all of it like a shadow that no one bothered to notice. Before sunrise, she had already filled water troughs, brushed 6 horses, repaired a broken fence rail, and carried nearly 50 pounds of grain across the stable yard without a single complaint. No one thanked her. Few even remembered her name. To most of the workers, she was simply the quiet girl who accepted every unwanted task. If someone spilled feed, Emily cleaned it. If a foal refused to eat, Emily patiently waited beside it until it finally trusted her hand. If an injured bird landed near the stable doors, She would wrap its tiny wing with strips torn from her own worn apron before releasing it back into the forest days later. She had learned long ago that kindness rarely changed how people treated her, but it always changed how frightened creatures looked at the world. That was enough. Old Martha, the elderly cook who prepared meals for the stable crew, quietly slipped an extra biscuit into Emily's basket whenever no one was watching. "You work too hard for someone who eats so little," she whispered one morning. Emily smiled with gentle gratitude before breaking the biscuit into smaller pieces. Instead of eating it herself, she scattered half of it for a family of sparrows gathered outside the kitchen door. Martha sighed with affectionate frustration. "One of these days you should think about yourself." Emily only answered with the same soft smile she always wore. The birds were hungry first. By midday, the stable yard buzzed with nervous conversation. Everyone had heard that the Alpha King himself had visited the forbidden stall during the night. Rumors spread faster than the wind. Some claimed the wolf had bowed to him. Others insisted the king had ordered the mysterious girl arrested. Every version grew more unbelievable with each retelling. Emily ignored every word while carefully cleaning an elderly mare's hooves. Gossip had never repaired a fence or comforted a frightened animal. The mare gently nudged Emily's shoulder before lowering her head into the girl's chest with complete trust. A young stable hand named Caleb laughed from across the aisle. "I swear every animal likes you more than people do." Emily looked up with a quiet grin. "Animals only. Ask if your heart is honest." Caleb opened his mouth to joke again before suddenly falling silent. Every horse inside the stable lifted its head at the exact same moment. Birds resting along the rafters stopped singing. Even the breeze seemed to hesitate. Emily slowly turned toward the entrance. Alpha King Adrian stood beneath the morning light wearing a simple dark riding coat instead of ceremonial robes, making his presence feel somehow even more commanding. Stable workers immediately lowered their heads, but Emily remained frozen only because she had not expected him to return. Adrian was not looking at the workers. His silver eyes rested entirely on her. Before either of them could speak, a familiar sound echoed from outside. Soft footsteps crossed the damp earth. The great silver she-wolf emerged from the tree line surrounding the stable grounds, ignoring every guard and every shouted warning. Her powerful body moved with calm determination despite the life she carried within her. Without the slightest hesitation, she walked straight past the king, crossed the yard, and gently rested her head against Emily's shoulder. The entire stable fell into absolute silence. No one in the stable dared to breathe. The silver she-wolf leaned her great head against Emily's shoulder with complete trust, her golden eyes closing for a brief, peaceful moment, as though she had finally found the place she belonged. The horses remained perfectly still, their usual restless movements replaced by an almost reverent calm. Alpha King Adrian watched every heartbeat of the silent exchange without speaking. He had spent his entire life around wolves, studying their instincts, earning their loyalty, leading the strongest packs across the northern territories. Never once had he witnessed a royal blood wolf willingly seek comfort from an ordinary human. It was impossible. Yet impossible things were becoming strangely common whenever Emily Carter stood nearby. One of the senior guards cautiously stepped forward, keeping his hand raised to show he meant no harm. "Your Majesty, perhaps we should escort the animal back into the forest before someone gets hurt." Adrian did not answer. Immediately, his eyes never left the wolf. "Does she appear frightened?" he finally asked. The guard hesitated. "No, sir." "Does she appear aggressive?" "No, sir." Adrian nodded once. "Then perhaps we are the ones interrupting her choice." The answer silenced every objection. Emily slowly lowered one trembling hand and gently brushed her fingers through the thick silver fur around the wolf's neck. She did not move with confidence because she believed herself fearless. She moved with the quiet care of someone who respected every living creature. "Good morning," she whispered softly enough that only the wolf could hear. "Did you sleep well?" The enormous animal answered with a deep, contented rumble that echoed through the stable like distant thunder softened by rain. Several workers exchanged stunned glances. Caleb blinked twice before quietly muttering, "I have never even heard her make that sound." Emily smiled without realizing anyone was watching. "She likes when someone speaks gently," she said. "She has been lonely for a long time." Adrian finally stepped closer. Every guard instinctively reached for him, but he raised one hand, stopping them. The distance between the king and the wolf slowly disappeared until only a few feet remained. The silver she-wolf opened one eye, studying him carefully. Instead of growling, she simply returned her attention to Emily. Adrian understood the message immediately. She had accepted his presence, but her trust belonged elsewhere. "How long has she been visiting you?" he asked quietly. Emily looked up with visible surprise, as though she had forgotten the king himself was standing there. "Almost every night for the past 3 months, Your Majesty." Murmurs spread through the gathered workers. Adrian frowned slightly. "And no one reported this?" Stable Master Harold awkwardly cleared his throat before stepping forward. We thought the wolf only wandered near the barns searching for shelter. We never realized she was coming to see the girl." Emily quickly shook her head. "Please do not blame anyone. I asked no one for help." Adrian turned back toward her. "Why not?" Emily looked down at the wolf resting peacefully beside her. "Because she never wanted food as much as she wanted someone to stay. Sometimes the hardest thing to give another soul is not medicine or bread. Sometimes it is simply your presence." Those quiet words settled over the stable with unexpected weight. Adrian felt something shift deep within himself, a memory of lessons his own mother had once whispered before he became king. She had always said that true strength was measured by the lives that felt safe beside you. Before he could answer, the silver she-wolf suddenly lifted her head toward the open courtyard. Her ears twitched. Her breathing changed. Emily noticed it immediately. The gentle smile faded from her face as concern replaced it. She slowly rested one hand against the wolf's side and closed her eyes for only a second. When she opened them again, her voice had become barely more than a whisper. "She is not here because she is lonely anymore." Adrian's expression sharpened. "Then why is she here?" Emily swallowed as the wolf leaned harder against her trembling hand. "Because her pups are coming much sooner than they should." The change came so quietly that only Emily noticed it. While everyone else stared at the great silver wolf with awe or uncertainty, Emily focused on the small details others overlooked. The steady rhythm of the wolf's breathing had become uneven. Tiny tremors passed through her powerful shoulders. Her ears, which usually stood alert, folded back for only a moment before lifting again. Emily slowly knelt beside her, keeping every movement calm and predictable. She rested both hands against the thick silver fur and closed her eyes, listening not with words but with patience. The wolf released a low whine that sounded almost embarrassed, as though she had tried to hide her discomfort for as long as she could. Emily opened her eyes and looked directly at Alpha King Adrian. "She is frightened," she said softly. Several stable workers exchanged confused glances. Caleb frowned. "She does not look frightened." Emily gently shook her head. "Some mothers hide their fear because they believe everyone depends on them being strong." The simple sentence settled over the stable with surprising weight. Adrian watched the young woman carefully. She spoke with quiet certainty, never seeking attention or praise. It was as though she understood the wolf through a language that did not require voices. The silver wolf shifted her weight and leaned against Emily again, breathing a little harder. Emily carefully ran her fingers along the side of the wolf's body before stopping near her swollen belly. Her expression changed. Concern filled her gentle brown eyes. "She needs a quiet place," Emily whispered. "Not here. There are too many people, too many sounds." Stable Master Harold stepped forward. "The royal animal healer is already on the way." Emily looked toward him with respect, but she did not seem relieved. "Please ask the healer not to rush her. She needs to feel safe before anything else." Adrian folded his arms thoughtfully. "You speak as though you have done this before." Emily lowered her eyes for a moment. "When I was little, my mother cared for injured animals in the hills beyond our village. She always told me that fear makes pain feel heavier. Kindness makes room for healing." Adrian noticed the sadness hidden beneath those words. There was love in the memory, but also loss. Before he could ask another question, the wolf gently nudged Emily's hand toward her own side again. Emily smiled faintly. "I know," she whispered. "I am staying." Without hesitation, she removed her worn shawl and folded it into a soft cushion beneath the wolf's head. The gesture was so natural that it seemed she never considered whether she might need the shawl herself later in the chilly mountain air. The wolf sighed deeply, closing her eyes for a brief moment. Even the nervous horses relaxed, as if the calm spreading from Emily had quietly reached every corner of the stable. Adrian found himself remembering stories from his childhood, old legends claiming that the rarest gift among wolves was not strength or speed, but the ability to bring peace wherever one stood. He had dismissed those tales as comforting myths told to young princes. Yet standing in the stable, watching a forgotten stable worker soothe the most feared wolf in the kingdom without force or command, those ancient stories no longer seemed impossible. Outside, dark clouds slowly gathered again over Blackthorn Keep. A cool wind slipped through the open stable doors, carrying the distant scent of approaching rain. The silver wolf suddenly lifted her head and looked toward the gray horizon. Emily followed her gaze, and a quiet realization crossed her face. She gently placed one hand over the wolf's shoulder and whispered almost to herself, "The storm is coming back, and she has chosen this place because she believes her babies will be safest here." Adrian looked from the anxious sky to the young woman kneeling in the straw. For the first time since becoming king, he understood that protecting his kingdom might begin not with armies or councils, but with protecting the one person a mother wolf trusted more than anyone else. By late afternoon, the sky had turned the color of polished steel, and the first cold drops of rain tapped softly against the stable roof once again. The royal animal healer finally arrived, carrying polished leather cases filled with herbs, clean cloth, and carefully crafted instruments. Yet the moment he stepped within 10 feet of the silver wolf, she rose with surprising speed and placed herself firmly between him and Emily. Her ears flattened, not in anger but in fierce determination. The healer stopped immediately, lifting both empty hands. "She will not allow me near," he admitted quietly. Stable Master Harold looked helplessly toward the king. Several guards shifted uneasily, uncertain whether they should intervene. Adrian remained completely still. His attention rested on Emily, who had not moved from the wolf's side since morning. She gently stroked the silver fur along the mother's neck until the wolf's breathing gradually slowed again. "She is not refusing help," Emily said. "She is afraid someone will separate us." The healer frowned with honest curiosity. "How can you possibly know that?" Emily smiled sadly. "Because she keeps checking whether I am still beside her before she closes her eyes." Everyone looked more carefully. They realized Emily was right. Every few moments the wolf quietly opened one eye, searching only for the young woman before allowing herself another brief moment of rest. Adrian stepped closer. "What does she need?" Emily answered without hesitation. "Warm blankets, fresh water, quiet voices. Someone to remain with her until the babies arrive." The healer nodded slowly. "That advice is wiser than many treatments I have seen." Emily looked toward the darkening sky beyond the stable doors. "The storm will make everything harder. She must not feel alone." Adrian turned to the waiting servants. "Bring every clean blanket from the guest quarters that is not in use. Heat fresh water. Close the western doors before the wind reaches the stable." No one questioned the order. Within minutes, the stable transformed into a calm shelter instead of a workplace. Lanterns filled the room with gentle golden light, while thick blankets covered the clean straw surrounding the old stall. Emily quietly arranged each one by hand, making sure nothing would frighten the anxious mother. She even placed a small bucket of fresh water within easy reach before sitting beside the wolf again. The healer watched with growing amazement. "Your Majesty," he whispered, "I believe she has done more simply by creating peace than I could accomplish with every medicine I carry." Adrian folded his arms, unable to disagree. Outside, rain began falling harder, drumming steadily against the wooden roof. Thunder rolled across the distant mountains, but inside the stable only quiet voices remained. Emily softly hummed a melody she barely remembered from childhood, a tune her mother had once sung during long winter nights. The silver wolf listened with peaceful eyes, and slowly the tension left her body. Then Emily suddenly stopped singing. Her hand rested gently against the wolf's side as a new expression crossed her face. She looked toward the healer with calm urgency. "It has begun." The healer immediately knelt nearby, but made no attempt to move closer than the wolf allowed. Emily remained exactly where she was, speaking softly between slow breaths. "You are doing well. You are safe. We are staying with you." The wolf answered with a quiet whimper before resting her head against Emily's lap. Adrian had expected fear, confusion, perhaps even panic from the young stable worker. Instead, he saw remarkable patience. Emily never rushed, never demanded, never tried to control what nature had already begun. She simply offered steady comfort, allowing the frightened mother to lean on her without hesitation. Watching them together, Adrian understood something that no royal lesson had ever taught him. Leadership was not always the loudest voice giving commands. Sometimes it was the quietest heart giving another soul the courage to keep going through the storm. The rain continued long into the evening, wrapping Blackthorn Keep in a veil of mist that softened every tower and stone wall beyond the stable. Inside, the warm glow of lanterns flickered gently across weathered beams while everyone waited in respectful silence. Emily remained beside the silver wolf without once complaining of the cold or the passing hours. Every so often she refreshed the mother's water, adjusted the folded blankets, or whispered quiet reassurance that seemed to calm both the anxious wolf and the nervous people watching nearby. Alpha King Adrian had dismissed the unnecessary guards, leaving only the healer, stable master Harold, Caleb, and a handful of trusted attendants. None of them realized they were about to witness something that would change the history of the kingdom. The silver wolf suddenly lifted her head and looked directly toward the stable entrance. Her golden eyes became unusually bright, reflecting the lantern light like polished amber. A cool breeze slipped through the narrow gap beneath the wooden doors, carrying with it the fresh scent of pine forests and mountain air despite the heavy rain outside. Emily slowly followed the wolf's gaze. She felt an unexpected warmth spread through the stable, gentle rather than overwhelming, as though the room itself had quietly exhaled. The healer looked around with visible confusion. "Do you feel that?" he whispered. Adrian nodded once. "Something has changed." Before anyone could speak again, the silver wolf carefully stretched her neck toward Emily and gently pressed her forehead against the young woman's heart. She remained perfectly still. Emily instinctively placed both hands around the wolf's face, her eyes filling with quiet emotion she could not explain. Time itself seemed to slow. Every horse inside the stable lowered its head at the same moment. The restless birds nesting among the rafters settled into complete silence. Even the steady rain outside appeared softer, as though the entire world had paused to witness an invisible promise. Then something remarkable happened. Around the wolf's neck hung an old leather cord that no one had paid much attention to before. Hidden beneath her thick silver fur rested a small silver pendant shaped like a crescent moon. The worn knot securing it suddenly loosened on its own. The pendant slipped free without breaking and landed softly in Emily's open hands. She stared at it in surprise. "I did not touch it," she whispered. The healer stepped closer, his eyes widening the moment he recognized the ancient symbol. "Your Majesty," he said with quiet disbelief. "That emblem has not been seen in decades." Adrian looked from the pendant to the wolf. "What does it mean?" The elderly healer swallowed before answering. According to the oldest records, the Moon Guardians carried these pendants. They were entrusted only to wolves descended from the first royal bloodline. The pendant was never meant to be taken by force. It could only be given willingly. Emily immediately tried to return it. "It belongs to her." The silver wolf gently nudged Emily's hands closed around the pendant before resting her head peacefully across the young woman's knees once more. The message was unmistakable. She was not losing something precious. She was giving it away. Adrian watched the exchange in thoughtful silence. He had studied royal history since childhood, yet no lesson had ever mentioned a wolf voluntarily passing such a symbol to another person. The healer slowly lowered himself to one knee, not before the king, but before the quiet stable worker holding the ancient crescent. "I do not believe this is a gift," he said softly. "I believe it is recognition." Emily looked down at the small silver pendant resting in her palms, unable to understand why it now felt strangely warm against her skin. Outside, thunder rolled one final time before the storm began drifting beyond the mountains, leaving behind only peaceful rain and the growing sense that an old promise, forgotten by generations, had finally found the person for whom it had been waiting. The first cry of a newborn pup was so soft that several people wondered if they had imagined it. Then a second tiny sound followed, warm and full of life, and the entire stable seemed to release a breath it had been holding for hours. Emily smiled through grateful tears as the silver wolf lowered her head, gently welcoming the small bundle nestled safely against the blankets. The healer quietly confirmed that both mother and pup were healthy before stepping back again, careful not to disturb the peaceful family. One by one, more newborn pups entered the world, each greeted by the same patient care from their mother and the same quiet encouragement from Emily. No one rushed the moment. No one raised their voice. Even the horses stood silently, as though they understood they were witnessing something sacred. When the last pup had settled beside its siblings, the silver wolf looked completely exhausted, yet her eyes remained filled with calm trust. She turned toward Emily once more and gently touched her hand with the tip of her nose before looking toward Alpha King Adrian. The king slowly stepped forward. For a long moment he and the ancient wolf simply regarded one another. Then, in a gesture no one inside Blackthorn Keep had ever expected to see, the great silver wolf lowered her head before Adrian only briefly before turning back and placing it once again against Emily's shoulder. The choice was unmistakable. Respect belonged to the king, but complete trust belonged to the quiet young woman. A stunned silence settled across the stable. Stable Master Harold lowered his eyes in disbelief. Caleb whispered, almost to himself, "She chose Emily." Adrian felt no jealousy, only a deep certainty growing inside him. The oldest legends had always taught that loyalty could be commanded, but trust could only be earned through kindness freely given. Emily had never asked for either. She had simply stayed when another soul needed her. The healer slowly rose to his feet and looked carefully at the newborn pups. His expression suddenly changed. "Your Majesty," he said quietly, "please come here." Adrian knelt beside him. Across the forehead of the smallest silver pup rested a tiny crescent-shaped marking, its pale fur forming the same symbol carved into the ancient pendant now resting in Emily's hands. The healer gently smiled. The stories were true after all. Adrian looked at him. "Explain." The elderly man drew a slow breath. "Our oldest records speak of the Moon Guardians. When a royal bloodline felt the kingdom entering a new chapter, the first pup born beneath the moon's blessing carried this mark. It was never a sign of power. It was a sign that the guardian had recognized the heart worthy of protecting what mattered most." Emily quietly shook her head. "There must be some mistake. I am only a stable worker." The healer smiled kindly. "That is exactly why these signs cannot be bought, inherited, or demanded. They appear where humility already lives." Adrian turned toward Emily. Her clothes were still simple. Straw remained caught in her chestnut hair. Her hands were rough from honest work, and she looked almost embarrassed by the attention surrounding her. Nothing about her appearance had changed, yet everything about the room had. The servants no longer looked at her with casual indifference. They looked with quiet respect. Caleb was the first to bow his head. Then Stable Master Harold followed. One by one, every worker in the stable lowered their heads, not because anyone had ordered them to, but because gratitude came naturally after witnessing such extraordinary kindness. Emily stood speechless, clutching the small silver pendant close to her heart, while the newborn pups slept peacefully beside their mother. Adrian watched her with thoughtful eyes, realizing that the kingdom had spent years searching for strength in titles, traditions, and noble blood, only to discover that its brightest light had been quietly carrying buckets of water, feeding frightened animals, and asking for nothing in return. By sunrise the storm had passed, leaving thousands of sparkling drops resting on the grass surrounding Blackthorn Keep like scattered pieces of crystal beneath the morning light. News of the extraordinary night spread through the castle faster than anyone could contain it. Servants whispered in hallways. Guards quietly repeated what they had witnessed. Stable workers spoke of the ancient pendant, the newborn pups, and the mysterious peace that had filled the stable the moment Emily had remained beside the silver wolf. Before long, members of the royal council arrived, followed by noble families whose polished boots had never touched the muddy stable floor before that morning. They gathered outside with curious expressions, uncertain whether they believed the stories. Emily hardly noticed their arrival. She was sitting quietly beside the silver wolf, gently refreshing the mother's water while the tiny pups slept together beneath warm blankets. The silver wolf watched every movement with calm eyes, completely relaxed whenever Emily remained close. One of the older nobles frowned as he studied the scene. "Surely this is being misunderstood," he said. A stable worker cannot possibly be connected to the ancient guardians. The healer answered with respectful confidence. The wolf made her choice freely. No person commanded it. Another council member looked toward the silver pendant resting around Emily's neck. Symbols alone do not rewrite history. Before anyone could continue the debate, something unexpected happened. The smallest pup with the pale crescent marking slowly opened its tiny eyes for the very first time. Instead of crawling toward its mother immediately, the little wolf carefully made its way across the blankets with uncertain steps until it reached Emily. It rested its tiny head against her hand before peacefully falling asleep again. A gentle smile spread across the silver mother's face, if a wolf could be said to smile at all, and she made no effort to call the pup back. The stable became perfectly silent. The healer bowed his head. The choice has been confirmed twice. No one argued after that. Alpha King Adrian stepped forward and looked around the stable at every servant, every guard, every noble, and every member of his council. His voice remained calm, but every word carried unmistakable authority. Yesterday, many of you passed this young woman without learning her name. Today, you have witnessed what kindness can accomplish when no one is seeking recognition. Let this be remembered. The value of a heart is never measured by rank. No one spoke. Several nobles quietly lowered their eyes. Stable Master Harold approached Emily with visible regret. "Miss Carter," he said softly, "I should have thanked you long ago for everything you have done here." Emily smiled with the same gentle warmth she had always shown. "You do not owe me an apology." Everyone was busy doing their best. Harold blinked, surprised that she held no bitterness at all. Adrian noticed it too. Even after finally receiving the respect she deserved, Emily showed no desire to embarrass those who had overlooked her. Forgiveness seemed as natural to her as kindness. The king walked closer until he stood beside her. "Blackthorn Keep has many empty guest rooms," he said. "You should not return to sleeping alone in the stable." Emily looked around at the silver wolf and the sleeping pups before answering with quiet honesty. "I would like to remain here a little longer, if I may. They still need someone nearby." Adrian smiled for the first time since entering the stable the night before. "Then we shall make certain you have everything you need." As the morning sun climbed higher, its warm light reached through the open stable doors, falling across Emily, the sleeping pups, and the ancient silver wolf resting peacefully at her side. For the first time in many years, Blackthorn Keep no longer felt like a place divided by status and expectation. It felt like a home where even the smallest act of compassion had the power to awaken an old destiny and quietly transform every heart fortunate enough to witness it. Weeks passed, and with every sunrise Blackthorn Keep felt a little different than it had before the storm. The stable that had once been overlooked became the warmest place in the kingdom, not because of its walls, but because of the quiet kindness that filled it. Each day, the silver wolf grew stronger while her playful pups explored every corner of their home beneath Emily's patient watch. Horses that had once startled easily now stood peacefully whenever she entered. Birds gathered along the stable roof each morning as though they had learned exactly where gentle hands could always be found. Emily never asked for a larger room, finer clothing, or special treatment. She still woke before dawn, still carried water, still brushed tired horses after long rides, and still saved the last piece of fresh bread for whatever hungry creature happened to need it most. The only difference was that now people noticed. Stable workers greeted her by name. Children visiting the castle followed her through the gardens, hoping to hear another story about the forest or learn how to care for frightened animals. Even members of the royal council quietly sought her advice whenever an injured creature was discovered within the kingdom. The ancient silver pendant remained around her neck, not as a symbol of status, but as a reminder that compassion could never be separated from responsibility. Alpha King Adrian often visited the stable without announcing his arrival. Sometimes he helped carry buckets of water. Sometimes he simply stood watching the newborn wolves chase butterflies across the grass, while Emily laughed softly nearby. Those quiet moments taught him more about leadership than years spent inside the royal council chamber. One peaceful evening, as the setting sun painted the mountains with shades of gold and crimson, Adrian joined Emily outside the stable fence. The silver wolf rested beneath a large oak tree, while her growing pups slept close beside her. "Do you ever wonder why the guardians chose you?" Adrian asked gently. Emily looked toward the distant forest where the wind stirred the tall pine trees. She thought for a long moment before answering. I do not think they chose me because I was special. I think they simply found me when I was trying to be kind. Adrian smiled thoughtfully. Perhaps those are the same thing. Emily quietly shook her head. Anyone can choose kindness. That is why it matters. Her words lingered. In the evening, ere long after the conversation ended. Months later, travelers passing through Blackthorn Keep carried the story far beyond the kingdom. They did not speak first about the Alpha King, the ancient pendant, or the royal bloodline. Instead, they told the story of a forgotten stable worker who stayed beside a frightened mother when everyone else only saw danger. They spoke of a kingdom that remembered true strength was gentle, that trust could never be demanded, and that the greatest honors often found those who never searched for them. As the first stars appeared above the mountains, the smallest silver pup, now growing stronger every day, wandered to Emily once again and rested peacefully against her feet. The silver wolf watched with calm, knowing eyes, while Adrian stood nearby without interrupting the quiet moment. No proclamation was needed. No ceremony could have spoken more clearly. Long before a king had recognized her worth, long before the kingdom had learned her name, kindness itself had already chosen Emily Carter. And beneath the endless light of the moon, where promises older than memories still guided gentle hearts home, a new chapter began, proving that the brightest destinies are often discovered not by those who seek greatness, but by those who quietly choose love, one small act of compassion at a time. Thank you so much for staying with us until the very end of this story. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What was your favorite moment, and what message or lesson did you take away from Emily and Adrian's journey? Share your opinion in the comments below and join the conversation with fellow story lovers. If you enjoyed this tale, please give the video a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Alpha's Regret Stories. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss our next exciting story filled with romance, drama, betrayal, and unforgettable twists. See you in the next story.